glad you joined us for this edition of Connect with Skip Heitzig, our weekly in-depth Bible study. Currently, we are in the series Smart Home, and here's Lenya Heitzig to lead us into today's Bible study.
Today, we delve into a sensitive topic. Is a lifetime commitment to a spouse even reasonable? Does permanence have to become a goal if it means a couple just has to grin and bear it? What if a marriage hinders one's personal growth and self-fulfillment? Today, I want to make a case not just for getting married, but also for staying married. Let's go back to the divine architect's original prototype to understand what he had in mind when coming up with this idea of marriage. I bet we have your attention. So let's mark our Bible in Genesis 2 and Mark 10 as we join Skip for Till Death Do Us Part. What you need to know to make a marriage last.
Someone once said that marriage is like flies on a screen door. Those that are in want to be out, those that are out want to be in. Now, I don't know if you're in or out, but if you're in a marriage, I'm praying that you'll stay in a marriage. And why is it that so many people who begin a marriage relationship with such good intentions end up so miserable? No, they don't plan that. I've never met anybody who said, you know, my goal in life is to get into a miserable marriage relationship. I just sort of want to die that way, just in misery. And yet, so many people end up that way. At my wedding day, I was a nervous groom. I was nervous on a number of levels, but especially when the pastor shared those vows, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, love and to cherish. And then here's the phrase, till death do us part. And when he said that, I was like, whoa, man, that phrase weighs a lot. Till death do us part. That could be like any moment now. Yeah, wow. And he had just asked me the question prior to that, will I take Lenya to be my God-given wife as long as you both shall live? And again, it's like, wow. I mean, it hit me, the permanence of this thing. I had been thinking about the permanence of marriage a lot up to that day. In fact, to be quite frank with you, there were a couple of times where I had the fleeting thought that maybe I should just move to another country to get out of this permanent commitment that I was making. And the reason I felt that way is because I had seen so much failure in relationships. It was all around me. The rate of divorce was skyrocketing. And since 1981, it has not gotten any better. It has deteriorated since then. I was on one website, a legal website of a legal firm. They were putting out the statistics of this because they deal with this. They reported there's one divorce every 36 seconds in this country. One divorce every 36 seconds. That's nearly 2,400 divorces per day. That's 16,800 divorces every week. The average marriage that ends in divorce lasts 8 years. That's the lifespan. Average, 8 years. Now, because we all know these statistics, we've heard them over the years, this is nothing new to us. We sort of figured it's not getting better but worse. We know that. But because of that, it is now causing some, especially social scientists and others who examine these trends, to wonder if the idea of marriage itself over a long period of time is even reasonable. That's the word they're using. Is it even reasonable to ask a young couple to make such a lifelong commitment when they have no idea what they're getting into? Is that reasonable? Many say it's not. A Washington Post editorial article said, quote, "A reasonable level of divorce may be a symptom of a healthy and mobile society." So now it's so normal that it's healthy, it's good. The writer of this article contends long marriages are simply not natural. And he asks, is it not possible that the ideal companion for our younger child-rearing years will not be the ideal companion for our middle and latter years? So this author, along with many others, are saying it's just not reasonable. You can't expect people to make a lifelong commitment. This is why a lot of people are opting out of the marriage altogether, not even doing that, just having a partnership of some kind. In one report put out by Pew Research, 40% of the people that were studied overall said they believe that marriage is obsolete, including 31% of married people. Enough of the bad news. Let's get on to some good news. By the way, marriage research is typically all about bad news. If you want to get depressed really quick, just do what I've done the last few weeks and just start studying marriage and divorce trends. That'll put you on a downer really quick. And I've just sort of noticed that most marriage research is about failure. It's all the reasons it doesn't work. The good news is that though marriage is on the endangered species list, it is not doomed. I see every week plenty of good examples of solid, vibrant, flourishing, long-lasting relationships. But you need to know it doesn't just happen. It's not automatic. It's the deliberate result of determined people willing to make it work with God's grace and strength. Genesis chapter 2, I've asked you to turn there. There's only a few verses I want you to notice today. Genesis 2 is called a passage of primary reference. A passage of primary reference simply means it's the first time it is stated or mentioned or a concept or idea is articulated. First time God says something about it. Genesis 2 is one of those. And we know that because 4 times in the New Testament, the author or the speaker will refer back to this passage of primary reference. So we're going to look at that in just a few moments, this and Mark chapter 10. Now, marriage is the only game where both players can win. But how do they win? Well, they have to understand a few things. They need to understand what marriage is, they need to understand what marriage does, and they need to understand what marriage needs. And those are the things we're going to look at today. What marriage is, what it does, and what it needs. We need to understand that. So let's understand what it is. In Genesis chapter 2 and verse 22, God brings the woman that he fashioned to the man. And Adam said, it doesn't sound all that romantic, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." That's his opening statement. First date. "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed." Now in verse 23, Adam gets all poetic. Can you look at your Bible and tell me if it's the same as mine? It is put out in a poetic fashion. It is sort of the phrases are stacked up. It's different from the rest of the narrative. That's because verse 23 is the first poem in the Bible, the first poetic couplet. And then after that, it goes back to a narrative form. Now, interestingly, scholars have noted that there is a rhythm to it. That is, the first line has a 2-beat rhythm. "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." And the second line has a 3-beat rhythm to it. I'm not going to do it for you. Come on, man. "She shall be called." I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. So that's just interesting. I know, it's sort of like, this is like post-creation rap. You know, he sees this woman brought to him, and he starts breaking out in hip hop, in like sings a song for her. I like that. Now, I mentioned that the verse is not too romantic. You say, really? This is the first thing he says to her? This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. Does not sound like a great opener. And that's because it's hard to translate, we are told, from the Hebrew into English to capture the emotion of this. There's an emotional component that is missing from the translation that the Hebrew seems to capture. So a very loose translation would be, as soon as God brought the woman to the man, Adam said, wow, now this is it. This is the one that will complete me. He gets emotional. He sings to his wife. His song is basically, it's not just Adam anymore. It's Adam and Mrs. Adam. We're the Addams family. That's his song. John Calvin translates that verse this way: now at length I have obtained a suitable companion who is part of the substance of my flesh, and in whom I behold, as it were, another self. I love that. I'm looking at another self, the counterpart to my personality, the one that will complete me. Now look at the next verse and you'll understand marriage comes in three parts. First of all, leaving. Second, cleaving. Third, weaving. That's a marriage. Leaving, cleaving, weaving. Let's begin with leaving. Therefore, a man will leave his father and his mother. That's how marriage begins. Marriage begins by severing one relationship to solidify another relationship. What does it mean, leaving father and mother? It does not mean abandon father and mother. It does not mean, say, you're out of here, mom and dad, never want to text you, never want to write you, never want to email you, don't come over, you can't see the grandkids. That's not leaving and cleaving. It means to cut the cord of dependence on mom and dad. It means to establish a new first loyalty. Have you ever heard that term, first loyalty? So, young man and young woman, you're getting married today. That means from now on, your new first loyalty is not to your mom and dad. Your new first loyalty is to each other. So it means to establish an adult relationship with your parents. It means your parents are going to give you space to solidify that relationship. I always ask young couples, same question, what do your parents think? Usually it's, oh, they love him, or they think she's great. Every now and then when I ask the question, I'll get that, Dad kind of thinks he's a creep. Okay, what are you going to do about that? Well, I'm still going to marry him. That's fair. That's your choice. Just understand that your parents' view is going to complicate your relationship. How so? Well, when you get into a fight, things get really rough, you're going to think back to the ideal image your parents had of the perfect guy you should marry, and you may want to change or try to change. Good luck trying to actually change him into that image. It's just going to add stress to the relationship. I've discovered that some kids never leave their parents emotionally. They're still attached to their parents emotionally, sometimes dependent upon them monetarily. And sometimes a marriage is even held hostage by parents. So just a note to parents who have kids that are about to be married, release them. Please release me, let me go. So in the marriage ceremony, there's going to be a ceremonial component that illustrates this. As the bride and groom come up, the preacher is going to say, who brings this woman to be married to this man? At which point you will say, I do, or we do, or her mother and I do. Really do that. Really release them for their benefit. Give them space to leave. Then the second one is to cleave. It is leaving, but it is also cleaving. Now notice the verse, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. So marriage requires a deep, determined commitment of permanence. That's what joined means. Now, I'm reading to you from the translation that I have chosen, the New King James Version, and it's probably the most common word used in most versions, to be joined together. Let me give you my opinion. It's a weak translation in this verse. To leave father and mother and then to be joined is just a little too weak. It does not capture the Hebrew meaning. Dabak is the Hebrew word. And if you have, anybody here have an old King James version of the Bible? Okay, so shout it out. What is the word? Cleave. Thank you. It means, that's a strong translation, to cleave, leave and cleave. Leave and be joined, weak. Leave and cleave is stronger. Because the word dabak literally means to cling to or to impinge upon. That's strong. Or to follow hard after, or to stick on. The idea is permanence, an indissoluble union. You are glued, you are welded, you are stuck. That's how people feel. I'm stuck. Glued, welded. Now that always brings up the question, does that mean there can be no separation under any circumstance? No. There is one circumstance where that union can be dissolved. But never without damage. Never without damage. Show me one divorce where somebody is not damaged. I have never heard of one. I've never seen one. Think of it this way, it's been helpful to me. If you took two pieces of paper and literally did what it says here, glued them together, and let the glue dry, you now have one flesh. You have one unit. If the next day you looked at that thing you made, gluing two pieces of paper together, and you said, you know what, I've changed my mind. I want to separate them. You could do it. You could get a razor blade and very deftly and slowly, cut between the paper and remove it. But let me ask you a question. By the end of the day, once you have taken them back apart, are they the same as they were? Have they been changed dramatically? Yet they don't resemble the first entity. You can't do it without damage. They're not the same. The idea of leaving and cleaving is that they become one now. There's a permanence there. Today, the idea of permanence is all but gone. God has given us his blueprint. It's here. We have come along and redrawn the blueprint and added a back door, a divorce door. So yeah, couples still say their vows every week. They still say they promise to be faithful until death. But with some, it's like I can hear under their breath almost, unless there's a glitch. But cleaving means that husband is saying to his wife, I am faithful to you even when you lose the first blush of your early beauty, even if you are untidy around the home. And she says, I'm going to be faithful to you even when you bulge around the center and get bald on top and we get poorer instead of richer. I'm in it for the long haul. That's the idea of cleaving. So that's what a marriage is. It is leaving, it is cleaving. Third, it is weaving. Leaving, cleaving, and weaving. And that comes at the end of verse 24. It continues, and they shall become one flesh. Please notice the word become. It does not say they will instantaneously be, on their wedding day after the vows, one flesh. Oh, you become that. It takes time. It takes a lifetime. Lenya and I are in many ways similar. In other ways, polar opposites. We have similarities. We both have relatively strong personalities. We're both leaders. We both have kind of that A-type communication skill thing going on. We're teachers. We lead organizations, both of us. But we're opposites. I'm very spontaneous. She is not. She's very planned. I'm messier. I would just say I'm messy, but I've been married now a number of years, so that's diminished maybe a notch. So I'm messier. She is much tidier. I am mostly right. She is always right. Missed it by that much. Now, when it says they'll become one flesh, at the basic level of interpretation, it's speaking of the physical sexual union, coming together, producing a child. That child is the one flesh amalgamation of those two. But one flesh carries a greater meaning. It means that you share everything. You share your bodies. 1 Corinthians 7 says the man's body does not belong to him anymore, it belongs to her. A wife's body belongs to him. You share bodies, you share possessions. You hopefully share insights with each other. That's one flesh. Wayne Mack, in his excellent book on marriage, said, and I'm quoting, "It is the type of relationship that is shared with no one else other than one's mate. It is a partnership in every area of life for as long as both partners live. In other words, there is absolutely nothing about which one spouse can say to another, 'That's none of your business.' The wife has complete and unfettered access to every area of her husband's life, and so also the husband to every area of his wife's life. There are no locked doors or secret hiding places." Now again, this is not instantaneous. It is a lifelong process. Take a guy who throws his socks in the sink, mate him up with a woman who irons paper napkins, and get them to be on the same page. Good luck with that. How does that happen? It happens by weaving. By weaving. I want you to put a picture in your mind. Maybe this will be helpful, maybe not. It's helpful for me. Put this picture in your mind. Your marriage is like the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower is pretty cool, right? It's iconic. It's in Paris. Everybody who goes to France wants to see the Eiffel Tower. Hey, did you know that the Eiffel Tower was originally built to last 20 years? 20 years. It's way beyond that. So it made it through year after year beyond that. It made it through World War II when Adolf Hitler said tear it down, and his governor in the area refused to do it. It has withstood decade after decade. It stands. Why? Because there are people who work on the Eiffel Tower every day, all the time, adding a weld here, adding a weld there, tightening or replacing a nut and bolt here, tightening and replacing a nut or bolt there. They're constantly adding points of strength. So I learned this years ago when I visited with my wife the Eiffel Tower, wanted to go up, and I noticed there's a work crew. And so I said, "What's up with that?" They said, "There's always a work crew. All the time. We always add a weld or a nut and bolt." So what that does, it produces longevity. Over time, it becomes immovable. So husband and wife are like two welders. Guys like this illustration. Chicks, not so much. I'm a welder. Yeah, in the sense that you are going to spot weld over here and tighten that bolt over there, and you're going to make your relationship immovable. You're going to hold it together. That's the weaving over time. A marriage is not held together by chains. I've heard guys say those stupid remarks before their buddy gets married. "Oh, you're getting married. Getting the old ball and chain. You're a prisoner of war." A marriage is not held together by chains. It is held together by threads. Tiny threads woven every day, every week, every month, over years, that make that absolutely immovable and strong over a lifetime. So understand what a marriage is: leaving, cleaving, weaving. Second thing to understand what marriage does. What all that leaving, cleaving, and weaving produces is this: intimacy. That's the goal, intimacy. If done right, all those things will produce intimacy. Verse 25 is intimacy. It says, "And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and we're not ashamed. All the guys like that verse. Oh, they're naked. Naked means to lay bare. It has a reciprocal idea of being bare, naked, with another person and before another person. But the idea is intimacy. Don't focus on the naked as much as what the naked is symbolic of. They're open and unashamed before each other. That is intimacy. Closeness, openness. Intimacy is way more than sex. And if some guys go, it is? Yeah, what intimacy is the deep and rewarding connection between a husband and wife, physically, spiritually, emotionally, socially, all those levels. And by the way, intimacy is what everyone longs for.
Next time on Connect with Skip, we'll conclude this important message about marriage from the series Smart Home. Now, I want to let you know about a perfect resource we are offering this month. It is one you will want to share. It contains the booklet Overcoming an Anxious Mind, a full music CD by our very own Battle Drums Worship Group, and a special full-length teaching by Pastor Skip called Worship in the Uncertainty.
How is your stress level on a scale of 1 to 10? Stress is a thief, a robber of peace and joy. We want to help you live with an anchor of faith so you can learn to lean into God in times of anxiety by sending you 3 powerful resources. Skip Heitzig's new booklet, Overcoming an Anxious Mind, his teaching Worship in the Uncertainty on CD, plus the War is Over Worship CD. This bundle is our thanks when you give $35 or more today to help expand the Bible teaching outreach of Skip Heitzig. Call now to request these 3 encouraging resources when you give 800-922-1888 or give online securely at connectwithskip.com/offer. Thanks for joining us on Connect with Skip Heitzig. We're connecting you to God's never-changing truth in ever-changing times.